Welcome, everybody, from my side. Welcome to our first digital launch event, Green Deal Ahead Challenges and Perspectives for eFuels, or #Power2Future. My name is Ralf Diemer. I'm the Managing Director of the eFuel Alliance and happen to be today's moderator. We are already 180 participants and the number is still growing. So again, a very warm welcome here to our first event. Of course, first of all, we would like to start by introducing ourselves, introducing the eFuel Alliance. And who better could be doing that than our chairman, Dr. Peter Seifried, which I would like to introduce you now. And we would like to talk a little bit about who we are and what we are doing. Peter, the eFuel Alliance is quite a young organization. So you are one of the first founding members. Why don't you tell us a little bit about why was it actually founded? Okay, now we would need Peter Seifried.
Sorry,
okay,
sorry,
here we are.
I was on mute. So again, thanks, Ralf, for introducing me. And from my side, also a warm welcome to all the participants today. And we are looking forward to a time of roughly 2 hours of interesting discussions and insights. Now, the question, eFuels Alliance is a young organization, and why was it founded? The original idea came from the German Unity, the German Association for Small and Medium-Sized Oil Companies, trading companies, when they realized that with the current situation, the regulatory framework in place doesn't enable businesses for liquids in Europe. We also realized that the ambitious climate goals in the EU could only be achieved from our perspective by having a level playing field and not only going for electrification solely. That's why we thought that fossil fuels or defossilized fuels, not only decarbonized, but defossilized fuels would be an option to help the climate, both in the transport sector, in the industrial sector, and also in the housing sectors. These are the main reasons why the alliance has been set up last summer.
So what is then the main purpose of the eFuel Alliance?
The main purpose is convincing politics and policymakers that creating a regulatory framework and a level playing field for all possible future options of mobility and energy use would be beneficial in terms of, would be beneficial in terms of helping the climate, but also from an economic point of view. We as an eFuel Alliance, we are not arguing against any idea. We are arguing for a fair competition and for a versatility of options to help the climate and to make it as economic as possible.
And the eFuel Alliance is actually growing quite quickly. So who are our members now?
We have over 130 companies meanwhile. And these companies are coming from all types of the value chain. The value chain of eFuels, and I would even say the value chain of mobility, because it's not only about eFuels, it's about mobility in total. We have large members like Siemens Energy, Bosch, ZF, or ExxonMobil. We have smaller and medium-sized companies, and we have even startups like Electrochaea and Nordic Blue Crude. In addition, also already advanced eFuels producers like Sunfire or NESTE are our members, and we are happy to have these innovative companies with us. So we really try to represent the value chain, but also the European and global perspective of eFuels. And the global perspective, from my perspective, from my personal perspective, is very important in this respect.
Yeah, and finally, one of the major reasons why we are meeting today is the start of our social media campaign. I think it's fair to say when we say that both of us are not really purely digital natives, but actually we are starting now this campaign. Why would we do that?
You are right, Ralf. We are not digital natives, and the fact that I had problems to join the meeting this morning is a proof of it. Why are we doing this? We think that we need to make many people aware of what eFuels are and what they provide as an option and opportunity for helping the climate. And we think that too many people out there and also in the policy making environment are not really aware of what eFuels can provide to the solutions. That's why it's about connecting climate policy to simple and practical solutions for transport, heating, and for the industry. We think we can offer solutions, and that we want to get out there as effective and possible solution producers. That's what we think is the main purpose, and all the purpose of today, making people aware of what is it about.
Yeah, thank you very much, Peter Seifried. Dear guests, with our digital campaign, Power to Future, we want to inform, but also offer opportunities for dialogue and debate. From today on, you will find us on Twitter and LinkedIn with events, videos, facts, checks, live talks, and interviews. We want to offer answers to questions which are out there, and in different micro-campaigns, we will tackle certain subjects around eFuels. You are, of course, invited to follow us. You are welcome to participate whenever our hashtag Power to Future comes across. And please share our content in your own network and with your own network. So let's get started then with Power to Future.
In the fight against climate change, we need to find answers today. How can we deal with 1.4 billion cars, 27,000 aircrafts, and 90,000 ships with conventional engines? How can we use an existing infrastructure to accelerate the energy transition? How can we store and transport renewable energy? How can we boost the entry into a global hydrogen production? How can we provide sustainable and affordable mobility for everyone? Our answer? Synthetic fuels from renewable energies as a key technology in an open competition for innovations. eFuels offer a climate-friendly alternative for all means of transport and have the potential to power the future.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now I would like to introduce our first guests. I just heard that he might have some technical issues, so I would like to, there he is. I would like to ask our technical support if this is fixed already.
We are currently working on it.
All right. So is there just no picture or also no tone?
So we are working on the audio connection right now.
All right. So what you recommend? Shall we wait for a moment?
Maybe you proceed and we do it later.
If you say so, we can do that, of course. So then I would suggest we actually proceed with our panel. As soon as Günther Oettinger is available to join, we would take his part. So I assume that all our panelists are already there. So we have a lot of distinguished speakers from our membership. I just will shortly introduce them. First of all, it's Dr. Doris Hafenbradl. She is CEO and Managing Director of Electrochaea, kind of a startup member in our membership. Secondly, we have Nyberg, who is member of the board of NESTE. We have Professor Armin Schnettler, who is CEO New Energy Business in Siemens Energy and President of the VDE, which is the German Association for Electronic and Information Technologies. And last but not least, we have Sigrid de Vries, who is Secretary General of CLEPA, the European Association of the Automotive Suppliers. I just saw the picture of Günther Oettinger. Is he available now? Sorry to ask again. Doesn't look like. Okay, then we proceed with our panel. I would like to start with Professor Armin Schnettler. He is with Siemens Energy, as I just said. By profession, he's an electrical engineer, actually a professor at the quite well-known RWTH Aachen, which is a very well-known university in Germany for technical studies. Mr. Schnettler joined Siemens 2013 and served in several positions. And since April 2020, he is CEO of New Energy Business Solutions. Mr. Schnettler, you are actually in the process. First of all, you are one of the world's largest players in electrolysers. And currently you are investing together with Porsche and ExxonMobil in a major new production plant in Chile for eFuels. In the eyes of many people, eFuels are something of far in the future. So please tell us, where are we in reality terms of production and also in terms of costs?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ralf, for your very nice introduction, and welcome to this interesting panel here. So maybe first of all, let me, before coming to the Chile project, maybe 1-2 sentences on the hydrogen economy, which we definitely are right now entering in. And talking about the hydrogen economy, then we need to say, unfortunately, that it is not really a market right now, definitely not a sustainable market. We are talking about a hype situation, which is for good and for bad, of course. But what we need to think about is, how do we enter into this second phase of the energy transition, which is the hydrogen economy, for the decarbonization? So for that, we need 3 aspects to consider. The first one is, and this is the most important one, we need an off-taker market. Right, so we need somebody who is really prepared and able to invest in something. This is about, I mean, different sectors. It's about industry, it's about the mobility, where they say willingness to pay for the product green hydrogen or derivatives is the highest. Secondly, you need green electricity. I'm focusing now, I mean, the picture in our background is green, so focusing on green hydrogen. And not blue or other colors here. So we need cheap electricities and therefore green hydrogen at acceptable costs, right? Or its derivatives. And thirdly, we need an infrastructure which is acceptable from its reliability and overall situation. So that is important. These are the 3 aspects to consider. Looking looking into the market, are important to notice that the area with the highest, say, willingness to pay is definitely the mobility, and it's sometimes very difficult to electrify, or not even if you're talking about aircrafts and all of that. Not talking about battery electric vehicles. So an interesting market with customers really preparing to pay. Unfortunately, the number of cars or trucks, heavy duty or light duty vehicles, is not that high as we need in order to kick off the hydrogen economy. So it is quite logical that we are looking for something which is kicking off the hydrogen economy, and at the same time with immediate effect in reducing the CO2 emissions, which is the installed fleet of cars. Yeah, so heavy duty, light weight, and say private cars. So more than 1.2 billion cars in the world, which requires, to my and to our understanding, an immediate effort. And that's why we are investing together with our partners, Armin, a local utility, and Porsche, into a full green production line in Patagonia, in the southern part of Chile, producing green electricity, additional electricity, important to say, integration in the grid, then the manufacturing process of hydrogen, green hydrogen in this case, via electrolyzers, and then the production of methanol and the methanol to gas line at the end. So what we are intending to do is already in 2022 to produce in this small but complete value chain, say, a solution, already more than 130,000 liters of eFuel next year. And if everything is going well, we intend to produce more than 50 million liters of green eFuel by 24, and by 26 even 10 times of that, so more than 500 million liters of green fuel to be produced in Patagonia. So this may be as a first statement. So if we manage the off-taker business, technology needs to be secured and make, say, the cost down efforts and all of that, but we cannot say that it is something in 25 or 2030 even. So if we start today, you can get the first cars filled by next year, as Porsche, of course, would like to do for the motorsports.
So that's really early on, actually. So in your view, what would you see as the main goal the EU must achieve regulatory-wise to gain the momentum for an industrial production of e-fuels?
Yeah, first of all, of course, unfortunately, and this is why what we are waiting for is we need the implementation of the Renewable Energy Directive, for instance. I mean, this is the first topic in order to stimulate the off-taker. And in addition, what we also have, I mean, with these new technologies, especially the first plants, they have a so-called first of its kind disadvantage or risk. And this is where we see that governmental support, financial governmental support is required. We are not looking for subsidized business, definitely not. We need the regulation, and we need to take care on the first of its kind risk. And we are sharing this, of course, with the governments and whoever is prepared to do so. So these are the two major parts talking about this. A clear regulation, which is a little bit major delayed, I would say. There's no question about that. The first of its kind risk will be taken over in Germany, for instance, by different funding programs. Happy to see that. Of course, we need to do it now, to implement it, and this is where we all need to accelerate.
And maybe a last question concerning the fact that Siemens, in fact, is a global player. When you follow the German or the European discussion, one could think e-fuels actually is an issue of some German companies or some German politicians even. How do you see the development in other markets of the world, such as China, for example, or the United States of America? Is there a competition ahead?
Definitely. I mean, let's start on the Western side from our view here in the United States. With the election of Joe Biden, the energy transition definitely is gaining speed. And we know our American friends that once we have decided on something, then they accelerate. I mean, for good or for bad, right? But definitely there will be a competition, but it's also an opportunity for us, right? Technology exports. I mean, we have a major footprint in the United States as Siemens Energy, for instance. So I see it in quite in a positive way. Coming to China, for instance, very impressive what is written in the 14th five-year plan. To be frank, I have no doubt that China will be in the leading role in the hydrogen economy, focusing on mobility, focusing on electric vehicles, as we know. So battery is already given in the last 5 years plan, and now they are very much focusing on the hydrogen economy. First application on, say, fuel cells, on fuel cell cars, mobility, but also on the production side right now. And it's just a question of time when they are entering in other sectors like steel and all of that. So we need to accelerate here. It's about the competition. I'm quite self-confident, I mean, being one of the largest player in that field, but we should not, lay back and be quiet and calm. We need to accelerate and speed up.
All right, thank you very much. We come back with some more questions later to you. And by the way, for all viewers, of course, you can also place questions in the Q&A session, which is, there is a button on the downside of your screen. And we will try to collect some of the questions later and ask them also to the panel. Now, our next guest is Dr. Doris Hafenbradl, a very Bavarian name, actually. But she's CTO and Managing Director of Electrochaea, as I said before. By profession, she's a Doctor of Philosophy and Microbiology. Before she joined Electrochaea in 2015, she worked in several different functions in the areas of business executive or as well as consultant. And Electrochaea is a company commercializing a biological process for storing low cost and stranded electricity as renewable gas, basically in the power to gas field. Maybe Mrs. Hafenbradl, you could start by just explaining a little bit what exactly are you doing and why this is needed.
Well, I start with thanking you for the nice introduction and thanks very much for the invitation. Very happy to participate in this really interesting and very important panel discussion today. So I will try to explain in simple words what we are doing, and it is really to make methane using microorganisms, little creatures that utilize hydrogen and CO2 from basically any source. Can be from a biogas plant, can be from a cement plant, even coming from air capture or wherever, and turn these molecules CO2 and hydrogen into renewable methane gas. And they do that for a living. They cannot be without doing that, so they will not lose that, and they can do that continuously. So we have developed a technology that allows the combination of renewable electricity and the generation of this biomethane or the renewable methane, because these organisms are quite flexible. They can adapt to electricity availability or hydrogen and CO2 availability, which they care more about. And so they can follow a wind profile. We can shut down the plant, or we can start it up within seconds, basically. So it's very well aligned with the availability or the changing availability of renewable electricity. The company Electrochaea was actually a spin out of the University of Chicago. So it's quite unusual actually that US spin out is then coming to Germany. We are located in Munich, or just outside Munich. And the reason is when the company was looking for a Series A investment, there was no interest in the US for renewable methane. And there were investors here in Germany, and in particular Munich Venture Partners here in Munich, who took the lead and started to invest into Electrochaea. And that's why the company actually moved here. And we have been here now for 6.5 years approximately. And we are a company of about 30 people. And we have developed the technology now from really tiny scale, from a teacup size, basically, all the way to industrial pilot plants. And we are ready now. We are the off-takers of that hydrogen. That's how we like to describe ourselves, because we are ready now for commercial application of that technology in large scale. We are at the moment scaling up the technology from our pilot size, 10 times, 50 times bigger, to really make an impact to generate the renewable methane that can then be stored in the gas grid, because the purity of that gas as it comes out of our bioreactor is actually pure enough so that the gas can be stored immediately into the existing gas grid, or can be utilized as a fuel immediately.
Thank you very much. Actually, that's something I find very interesting about the value chain of eFuels, because you have, of course, big players like Siemens, like NESTE or others, but also, and they are already in our membership, a lot of actual startups who are highly innovative. For me, it's always surprising to hear that a startup actually comes from United States to Europe. Usually we hear it the other way around. So my next question to you would be from a perspective actually of one of those startup companies in Europe. And you, of course, as all of our members are looking into an international global economy, what would you need most importantly from the EU to scale up and to grow into a major player?
Well, the key part is really to have regulations that are technology agnostic, so that we also can fit in. We don't think that our technology is going to be the only one that should be allowed or that will solve all our problems. And we are very focused on generating the methane, which then can also be a liquid fuel, the LNG. At the moment, all the rules and regulations are based on this well-to-wheel generation of for the LCA judgments. What we need is a carbon index-based regulation system, so that the new fuels and the new technologies can actually find a place there, and regulations can actually focus on carbon index rather than the mechanism that is currently implemented, which was meant for technologies that existed at the time. Now the innovation is coming, and the rules actually need to be adjusted. And the other part is really the build out of the renewable electricity system, which is where we play also a big role, because we can provide the storage function with an existing infrastructure, so that storage function that we can take, where electricity is turned into chemical bonds, and we are not the only ones, but there's other technologies obviously that do the same thing. We help the electricity system also to be built out, and the fact is that the hydrogen will be cheaper for all of the technologies. But we also need to see some rules and regulations that actually value the storage function that these technologies are bringing, and those are lacking at the moment. So we would need both the carbon index-based rules and regulations, but also an upside for the storage function that we are taking. And what Schnettler already said before, that the first of its kind implementation of that technology, that's the biggest hurdle for sure for all of us. And we need to find, or we would really welcome the situation that we can bring these first of its kind commercial plants into the field. I mean, they need to be commercially viable, but it's anyway hard to get them into the field. And if mechanisms and allowances for these first of its kind plants could be established, that would help dramatically to get technologies like ours into the market.
Right, so I think into the regulatory issues, we dig deeper a little bit later on. But thank you very much so far. That brings me to my next guest, Karl Nyberg, who is representing NESTE. He's in the board of NESTE. He joined NESTE in 2005, served in various different positions. And since 2019, he's a member of the board. I think it's called Executive Committee in NESTE, responsible for renewable road transportation, So Karl, NESTE is one of the leading players in the world in production of sustainable fuels. I think it's fair to say. Could you paint us a picture how exactly you produce eFuels and where we are in terms of real upscale production and also costs?
Thank you, Ralf, for the introduction, and thank you also for giving me the opportunity to participate in this very interesting panel discussion of this important event today here. So perhaps before going into that question, I would perhaps a bit share first on what we are doing as a company and a bit on our background. So where we are, I would say overall in Europe. And I think that I think it's good when we look at the current environment in Europe is that we are now getting an increasingly clear picture on the direction, and the target to reach the 55% is something that is really an excellent goal to have in the back of our minds when we move forward. And I think that this also sets a very good fundament for building innovations in Europe to combat the climate change. At NESTE, we believe firmly that we need to take into account all the existing and coming solutions to combat climate change in the transport sector. And I mean, we are seeing now a strong growth of EVs, and that's a really good thing. But at the same time, we have to keep in mind as well that the challenge is huge, and we're going to need a lot of different solutions. I mean, if you look already at the car fleet today, so it's more than the average age is more than 10 years of the cars, which means that the cars will be on the roads for way more than 20 years. So we will have cars with combustion engines for a long time to come still. And then if you look at the heavy duty segment as well, electrifying these vehicles will be far much more difficult. So I think it's important that we take on board this realism. And then if you look at how we as Europe should and make this transition, I think that we as a company, we have been going through this transition, and there are some learnings that we have from this. So we believe, first of all, that this requires really innovation, and it really requires partnerships. And what I mean with that is, I mean, we as a company has been transforming from being a regional refiner in the Nordics, now becoming a global leader in renewable and circular solutions. And this has required, of course, heavy investment. It has been requiring strong innovation. And our innovation is, of course, about further developing the existing NextBTL platform that we have, the technology that we are producing our renewable diesel with. But it also means expanding into new platforms like Power-to-X, and so on, and at NESTE, I mean, a good description of our the direction and efforts in innovation is that every 1 out of 4 people at NESTE is working in innovation. So we are heavily investing into these new technologies, and we are also as a company during this past few years, we have been building completely new value chains, and we have actually been able to get to a point where we have it's very tangible, the impact that we have on the emissions. So we helped our customers, for instance, last year to reduce their emissions by about approximately 10 million tons of CO2. So there are solutions already, but it's clear that we will need new solutions, and Power-to-X will be one such thing. Then if I look at the partnership thing, I think it's clear that we need to build partnerships that can really then also operationalize these new technologies, and we need to build coalitions beyond let's say the traditional networks. And this is also one reason why we joined the eFuel Alliance and why we are so excited to be part of this group of different types of players, like you described, where we have startup companies, we have OEMs, we have different also fuel companies. So I think it's excellent to work in this and to also get towards the 55% target that we have in EU for 2030. So then, of course, it's up to the policymakers to make the kind of regulatory frameworks that supports the direction then to reach this targets. But then to come back to your question, so as mentioned, we will continue to develop our existing platform, the next BTL platform, and we have to keep in mind that this is something that we are doing today, and it's here already to help us solve part of the climate crisis. But then we are also working. We have acquired a minority stake in Sunfire, and we are there developing then together with Sunfire this technology. We are also now we will, with our Multiply project in Rotterdam, we will also take into use some of that technology in a refinery environment. So moving into green hydrogen with our production. We also have a Power-to-X project ongoing in Finland as part of the Finnish research program Veturi. So there are a number of different programs that we are currently running, but at the same time it's also clear that there's a number of different areas that we need to look into and invest and further develop.
All right, very interesting. Thank you very much. Maybe let's dig into one of the regulations which are very important a little bit deeper. That's the Renewable Energy Directive, which of course concerns your company in particular. So if you would have the chance to write a proposal for the EU Commission on the new Renewable Energy Directive, which will come up in July, we suppose, how would that look like and why?
Yeah, so excellent question, and I would say that the first thing that from my perspective is extremely important here is the predictability of the policy and the stability of it. So I think with the RED II directive, we have been defining quite clear elements when it comes to sustainability requirements, when it comes to how we are calculating the greenhouse gas emissions and certain elements that are really in the fundamentals. And I really believe that we need to stick to these basics, because a lot of investments are already now happening on the basis of this regulation. So keeping the predictability of the regulation is really important, so that we don't end up shifting how we determine different requirements, how sustainability requirements, or then how we should calculate the greenhouse gas emissions. So I think that's the first part. Then the second part, I think it is becoming evident as well that the current ambition level in the existing RED II regulation is not going to be enough. I mean, in order to reach the 55%, we will need to have more ambitious targets. So clearly we need to also look at that. And then of course we need to also see that how we get the regulation that it's also technology neutral, a bit like was said here earlier already, that we have a regulation that then is supporting also these new technologies and supporting them but in a way that it doesn't discriminate one technology over the other. We should keep in mind that the overarching target is to reduce the emissions in the short term, but also in the long term.
Sorry for that. I was a lot of questions are pouring in already. Before we start to answer them, I would like to bring in our fourth guest, which is a very well-known player in the Brussels bubble, if I may say so, Sigrid de Vries. She is managing director of CLEPA, which is the European Association of the Automotive Suppliers. Sigrid actually is originally a studied journalist, and she also worked as journalist, also here in Berlin, where I am in the moment right now. And she's a very long-standing player in EU politics because she worked in different associations and for different companies on the European level, such as the Association of the Automotive Manufacturers, ACEA, for example. And since 2017, she's Secretary General of CLEPA. And I would welcome her very much by starting with one more general question to her. CLEPA is traditionally advocating for technology neutrality, but especially in the road transport sector, we are in a heavy transition towards electrification. So why would you, as representing the suppliers, still maintain to follow a broader path with different technologies?
Thank you, Ralf, also for the very nice introduction, and great to be in this important panel today. Automotive suppliers design and manufacture indeed all of the components and systems that are needed and going to be needed to achieve the ambitious climate goals for transport. And it's a pleasure to talk a bit more about that also here today. Because if we are serious about reaching the climate targets, we really must use all the technology options that we have. And that includes, of course, all of them in road, because road transport is still one of the main issues or concerns, if you like, when it comes to becoming climate neutral as a society and an economy as a whole. So the automotive suppliers support the Paris Agreement and the ambitious objective of achieving climate neutrality by 2050. And they are also the ones, as I said, that design and manufacture all of the solutions that are needed. And clearly, electrification is absolutely key. But an electrification only strategy limits the options that we have together as society. And this has a number of key dimensions, and I start with the most important one, which is that it limits the options for decarbonization. It reduces our chances of meeting our 2050 goals. And some of the previous panelists have already alluded to that. Fleet renewal, the pace of it is an element of that. But in addition, we can't be sure today that there will be enough charging infrastructure, nor that businesses and consumers will be able to make the change quickly enough, or that we actually solve all of the issues that are related to batteries, from material sourcing to recycling to the all-important question also of made in Europe. So to achieve climate neutrality, we need technology diversity and also fuel diversity. But there are more reasons to stick with technology openness. And it's really also not without reason that technology neutrality has been a key principle in EU policy for the past, well, more than 50 years. And there's a good reason also to stick to that now in facing these important challenges. So the other dimensions of an electrification-only approach are that it also actually limits consumer and business choice. And it puts unnecessary pressure on jobs, on employment. It strangles EU competitiveness globally, and it also stifles innovation. And the automotive supply industry is a truly innovation powerhouse. More than 30 billion euros invested annually in R&I. on top of what the vehicle manufacturers invest. And likewise, automotive suppliers employ directly in Europe 1.7 million people. And that again comes on top of the 1.2 million directly employed by vehicle manufacturers. So there is really quite a lot at stake. And we noted positively that the Commission wants to design the Green Deal as a green growth strategy. They aim to strengthen industrial activity and also to safeguard jobs. But today we do not quite see yet how this will be achieved. And we strongly believe, and that's also what we advocate for, that our challenge, again, together, is that we manage this important transition and also the acceleration of this transition in an ambitious and in a realistic and inclusive way. So as suppliers, we are strong advocates of an and strategy, rapid electrification with clean batteries and with renewable energy, and also clean combustion technology using renewable fuels. So we must make sure that we use the right technology depending on the use case, electric vehicles, battery electric, fuel electric, but also hybrids and plug-in hybrids, and also highly efficient and clean piston engines powered by hydrogen or by sustainable renewable fuels. A technology open approach is really critical. The key is to defossilize and not only energy, but also fuels.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sigrid. I mean, one of the important regulatory goals we have in common, CLEPA and the eFuel Alliance, is the incorporation of eFuels in the CO2 regulation for cars, vans, and trucks. We just have some questions also in the chat about that. I just want to incorporate one question, which is quite right, I think, because when we see the announcements of the car manufacturers being electric, fully electric in certain years, 100% electric, we all know that because we all read that in the newspapers basically on a daily basis. So why do you think still that eFuels should play a role in especially also in decarbonizing cars, vans, and trucks?
Because diversity is everywhere in mobility. So the acceleration of electrification is happening. And I think nobody in their right mind is arguing against that. And you see that also indeed in the announcements that vehicle manufacturers make, and also automotive suppliers are fully invested in all of that technology. So it's happening, but it's also a transition. And as always in a transition, there is some time needed, and there are asymmetric developments that need to be taken care of. And it's about managing that transition in an efficient and also in an effective way. So providing more options to decarbonize, to meet these all important climate targets is in everyone's interest. And there are levers in the current regulatory framework, and some of them were mentioned, the Renewable Energy Directive, but also the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Directive. This is about e-charging point and also alternative fuels infrastructure. There's the Energy Taxation Directive, again, another important element in all of this. And there are the vehicle CO2 targets. Today, there is a strong focus on a tailpipe emission target, so everything that comes out of the tailpipe of a vehicle, that limits the options. If we were to use renewable fuels, they can be low carbon, climate neutral. Again, it broadens the options and it makes it more effective and more efficient to reach the climate goals. And by allowing a link between those different regulatory instruments that are there, that is opened up. And road transport is really key because of the scale. Some of the previous panelists already mentioned it too. I think to make e-fuels really a viable option, we need more scale, we need an incentive for investments to be made. And that's where road transport, including passenger cars, really comes in, because that's the sector where scale can be provided. And it's also a sector where today the CO2 abatement costs are already very, very high. So if you offer an option, and again, it's an option, what we are arguing for is a voluntary crediting scheme that can be made use of. So if in the end, vehicle manufacturers would not use it because they find other ways, then there is no harm done because the targets will be met. But more options by using this this way as well will channel all of the investments and all of the efforts in a more efficient way. And importantly, it will safeguard key competitive technology that is where Europe is very strong. That is also an export product. Elsewhere in the world, it will be needed too. And it will help safeguard jobs, and it will help manage this transition for workers that need to be reskilled and upskilled in a better way.
All right, thank you very much. I just hear from my technical support that Günther Oettinger actually is on the phone now. So I would suggest, because we also wanted, besides the questions we need to answer from the chat, we wanted to elaborate a little bit more on the overall view of the European situation before the Green Deal. A short introduction from my side. I mean, Günther Oettinger is very well known since he has a long-standing career in politics, started in regional politics of Baden-Württemberg, where he has been minister president between 2005 and 2010. 2010, he joined the EU Commission and served for 10 years, 2 5-year terms in different positions, like Commissioner for Energy, then Digital Economy and Society, and finally for Budget and Personnel. So besides agriculture and climate policy, I think there is nothing, no issue Günther Oettinger didn't tackle from his time in the European Commission. He always was on the road, actually, and he still is on a regular basis on the road. That is why he is joining us by from his car. And I would be pleased, Günther Oettinger, if you could give us some remarks about your perspective on the subject Green Deal ahead and what we are having to expect in that respect.
Diemer, dear Peter, Seifried, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, but data transfer is not so easy. Audio is no problem, but video, we have a huge problem. So I do my best via this phone call. I think your eFuel Alliance is appreciated. And there's a window of opportunity. First of all, ongoing, Europe is in a recession. If you see the pandemic since February, March in 2020, the US are back. Winners are Amazon or Facebook or Alphabet, Google, Microsoft, and others. The winner is China. China is growing by 5 or 6%, and Europe, all member states ongoing, are in a deep recession. So we have to be careful. What's about our competitiveness? And no doubt, the automotive sector and mechanical engineering, so suppliers, this is our most important sector we have. It's our premium sector. And here, ongoing, Europe and our industries are in a leading position. It must be clear that rules and regulation for cars, standards for cars, for mobility in general, has to be a European responsibility. Because mobility by car or even by train, trucks and buses is per se continental. And so we need European rules, standards, and European regulation. 27 plus pillars, member state by member state, but on a European level. In a single market, we have freedom of movement, so we need common European standards. Common European standards for biofuel since many years. for CO2 emission reduction since many years. And we have a new European regulation since 2019 for 2025 and 2030. And now the Green Deal is the European priority. And before summer break, the Commission announced to come out with concrete proposals. There's a common understanding, and the decision by the European Council from December last year to reduce the CO2 emissions more than we have been willing before, at least minus 55%. We are coming from 1990. All CO2 emissions in 1990, even for the countries having been not member states their times, the Czech Republic or Slovakia, others, are included. And all emissions of EU 27, 28 in 1990 is 100%. And the Juncker Commission decided to reduce in 2030 by minus 40%. Now the von der Leyen Commission and European Council said at least minus 55%. There are 5 broader sectors in which we have to concretize these minus 55%. First of all, agriculture. Second, our industries. Third, our energy sector. Fourth, housing, our buildings, heating and cooling. And, but not least, the mobility. So we have to see which proposal will come out before summer break for mobility, for trucks, for buses, mainly for cars. And here, your alliance has to play and can play a quite important role. But what we need is a proposal which is open to technology neutral. I'm concerned that there is not really openness to technology, not really neutrality. Because for the moment, e-mobility is key. And when we started with e-mobility, 2011, 2012, maybe it was okay to say an e-mobile doesn't emit everything. This definition is okay. But if you see the electricity the car needs, and our ongoing European electricity mix, zero emission is not the reality. We have ongoing 30–40% coal to power. Ongoing for next decade gas to power. And so what we need is a fair and complete analysis. Emission is coming from an e-car, and what is feasible by eFuels and existing engines. And the existing fleet we have with hundreds of millions of cars all over Europe, with our existing infrastructure, our gas stations. So I think that we should together with our arguments and with your power for a fair competition and level playing field between e-cars and between e-fuel and the fleets we have and existing electricity mix we have to see, and not via ideology just to be in favor of e-mobility. The debate is ongoing, and I'm sure after a Commission's proposal, there's an additional window of opportunity for your alliance, for all stakeholders, because the Parliament and the Council, they will start with their negotiations afterwards, autumn this year. It will need at least up to end of 2022 for to come to a new decision, a new CO2 emission reduction goal, and an open picture, I hope so, for more than just one technology. In addition, it's about our industries, about our OEMs, about our suppliers, because it's not just the European Union market, it's a global market. And our vision must be to export cars produced in Portugal, Spain, Slovakia, Germany, France, Italy, others, and to stabilize the economic situation of our suppliers via the global market, via exports to Latin America, to South America, to North America, to Africa, to several growing countries in Asia and to India. And I'm sure that there will be a market for e-fuels. There will be a market for existing internal combustion engines. And if we don't want to lose these markets, we need a double strategy. One part of the strategy is indeed our e-mobility. But the second important pillar has to be to see which option e-fuels can bring for our CO2 emission reduction strategy, for our industrial strategy, for jobs in Europe, for our European position in a global competition. Next point I want to mention is China. Europe is reducing CO2 emission by at least 55, and Europe is willing to be CO2 neutral in 2050. I see a double strategic trick of the Chinese government. They are in contact to us, speaking about CO2 emission reduction, but they have a double strategic trick with two decades. First decade, now up to 2030. We are reducing CO2 emissions by at least 55%. And China is emitting in 2030 more than ever. Climate change problems we can't solve without China. And I see here a first decade which is dangerous for us. And the second decade is from 2050 up to 2060. Because the Chinese government is announcing that China will be CO2 neutral in 2060 and Europe in 2050. Germany even earlier in 2040 or 2045. And these 10, 15, 20 years will be decisive for industrial investments, for industrial competitiveness, for industrial production. So what does that mean? I think we have to be ambitious but realistic. Ambitious and not naive. We have to be balanced. CO2 emission reduction is important. Climate change is a huge problem. But jobs in our industries, or growth of our industries, competitiveness of our companies and our technologies is as important as climate change policies are. The last point. In the Juncker Commission and earlier we had discussions about ETS. Again, now we have a discussion. Should mobility, should emission by cars, trucks and buses, even by planes, be under the umbrella of our emission trade system, or should it be outside? I think the discussion is ongoing. Many member states are in favor to integrate mobility into our ETS. Others are defensive or negative. I think what you need is a position as well. as OEMs, as suppliers? Is it really meaningful to integrate mobility? Or do we need sectoral rules, sectoral regulation for cars, for standards and emission reduction goals for our cars and our trucks? Open question. Even here, your alliance and your position is important. So may I congratulate the organizers for 2 days digital conference, and may I push you, invite you to take part, because from now up to end of June and afterwards up to end of 2022, there are 2 windows. The first one is a Commission's window. The second one is Parliament and Council and trilogues at the end. And I think we have a lot to win or to lose. I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Oettinger, for this insight, and thank you for participating in this event. We will try to make a transcription because I saw some questions about that in the chat. I'm very sure that we will have further opportunities to discuss the European situation with you, simply due to the fact that, as you pointed out very rightly, in the next 2 years, there will be a lot of important decisions made in the European Parliament and in the European Council. We have elections in Germany coming up in September, which will interfere there. We have French presidential election coming up next year. So there will be a lot of interesting debates also on the political level in that respect. We will come back to that, I'm very sure. Günther Oettinger, thank you very much for participating, and I think I speak on behalf of all when we wish you a good further trip on the road. Thank you very much.
Thanks to all of you. Have a good conference and hope to see you directly, maybe in Brussels or Berlin. If you want to deepen our exchange of view, I'm available.
We will do that. Thank you very much. So we have a lot of questions now concerning different players of the panel. Maybe I start with one question to Mr. Schnettler, which he partly answered already in the chat. But actually one very important criticism towards eFuels, especially when it comes to usage of eFuels in the transport, in the road transport sector, is the issue of efficiency. So people say to use the renewable energy in electric cars directly is always much more efficient than to produce eFuels, lose energy on the process there. So maybe you could elaborate a little bit in that respect, why you think, what you think about this argument, or how would you argue these points? And maybe that is also again linked to the fact that you are investing now in a production in Chile, and that is maybe also referring to that question. Mr. Schnettler, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. There is no argument against it. I mean, as an electrical engineer, it's close to the electrical world, of course. So whenever you have green electricity or any type of electricity, you should use it directly. And you should even avoid any storage or, say, transfer into other form of energies. So definitely. So this is for sure the best argument. And I would never argue against battery electric vehicles for small cars, etc. But nevertheless, there is a market, especially the existing global fleet of cars, which is a market which definitely has a potential to become decarbonized much quicker rather than by replacing through BEVs or plug-in hybrids or whatever. So definitely, so there is a market. The efficiency actually is not really the critical topic once we are talking about renewable energy sources. Yeah, this is important to say. It's more about the levelized cost of mobility or levelized cost of hydrogen. If you have, I mean, the green electricity and maybe the green CO2, etc. If you have it available, then it's all about what's the outcome. And believe me, this is something which is helping reducing the CO2 emissions definitely, and much quicker, just waiting for being the whole fleet electrified. So no doubt about, I mean, using electricity first, and then using, for instance, hydrogen or derivatives. And we should not even focus on mobility only. Mobility is only a part of the sectors for the hydrogen economy. Definitely, even if we are talking about eFuels here, so there will be a major market for fuels, as I said before, for ships, for aviation, in all of that. And more than 50% of the final energy consumption cannot easily be electrified. So this is the business of Siemens Energy, more or less, yeah, covering all the different sectors. So believe us, we would tackle that. About why Chile, for instance, again, it's all about willingness to pay and levelized cost of fuels or of hydrogen itself. There are three major aspects defining the price, for instance, for green hydrogen. The first one is price of electricity, which is really significant. The second one is the loading factor of the plant producing the fuel or the hydrogen. And the third one is the capex and opex of the infrastructure. And in Chile, we get electricity prices below $20 per megawatt hour, which is equivalent to 2 cents US cents per kilowatt hour and less. With the loading factor, say, availability of wind power in that region of more than 6,000 hours a year. So absolutely fantastic conditions, more or less. There's one disadvantage, it's far away. So that's the reason why we are looking towards methanol and fuels. It's easier for shipment. But talking about Australian, I mean, Australia is not really closer to us. So in any case, we need to solve the production topics with the, say, reliability, safety, and cost. And we need to solve the transportation part. So if we manage this, and I'm pretty sure that we will do, we will enter quickly into the second part of the energy transition.
So can you give us a prediction? When do you think, cost-wise, we will be in an area with eFuels which are competitive, fairly competitive, let's say?
Competitive. I mean, if you have a look on the price, no, not cost, yeah, on the price for fuels with this very high taxation. So if you compare the price with taxation for classic fuels, compared with the cost of eFuels with no or without any, or with a little bit of taxation, like in the LPG, for instance, within the next few years. So before 2025, and it's not a matter of the timeline, it's a matter of the installed base. I mean, if you would wait 5 years without doing anything, there will be no change in the cost situation. So it's more or less talking about the installed base of these infrastructures. And as I said before, 24, we would like to produce more than 50 million liters. So we are targeting prices or cost below 2 euros per liter. And if we would do it again, I mean, a factor of 10, definitely the price will be in the range below 1.5, say 1 to 1.5 euros per liter.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. There are several questions for Mrs. Hafenbradl concerning actually her concrete business. So I would just place it here. How to upscale your technology is the question, and is it possible in wind sun-rich countries as well?
Yeah, so to the scale-up question, we are at the moment scaling about tenfold from where we were, and that's with the support actually from the European Investment Council, the EIC Accelerator Program, that helps us to do that activity more quickly. And there has also been a press release that demonstrates that we will be participating in even 5 times larger project in Belgium, where we would utilize CO2 to make renewable methane. So the scaling of what I'm talking about is in the first step about 10 megawatt electrical input on the electrolyzer side, generating about 500 normal cubic meter per hour of methane with such a plant. And then the next step is about 5 times that big. And then we just, it is also just a matter of multiplying. So the scale up is happening as we speak. And implementation of that technology can be done right away. So we are ready for that. And then the second question was about wind and solar.
Yes, it is possible to expand your technology in areas or countries with rich wind and sun outfall, so to speak.
Yes, certainly. I mean, the more renewable electricity is available, the better, because you can, as I said, or tried to explain before, as we are implementing technologies like ours, the renewable electricity also needs to grow along, and we will be helping actually that technology to grow because it needs the storage function. Of course, electricity needs to be used as electricity first, as we heard before, but then where do we store all of that? And when we think about California, for example, there were terawatt hours curtailed. So that when we talk about this efficiency question, there's zero efficiency of a wind park when it is actually curtailed, and so the opportunities are actually increasing for these technologies as the renewable electricity is growing, and we provide a solution because we can take the electricity or the hydrogen for us in that case when it is available, when there is too much, when there is no other use for the electricity, but not only then obviously, but that helps to be in countries where you have a lot of wind. So Chile is certainly an interesting country, and many others.
Thank you very much. Maybe just one question in addition concerning that. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on that. What are the planned milestones for Electrochaea regarding products and production volumes from pilot to mass production?
It's the scale up that we are doing at the moment, so tenfold larger than the pilot plants. That would be the 10 megawatt electrical input in the 500 normal cubic meters per hour of methane production. But we are thinking much larger scale, 50 times that, 100 times that, and there's basically no limitation for the technology, because first of all, it can be scaled to those dimensions that I just mentioned, and then you just multiply your bioreactors basically, and you just have multiple of those to have really large installations. And from a technology scaling perspective, we have not seen any limitations or any risks that are associated with that scaling. So the first milestone is now to complete that 10 megawatt electrical input installation, and then we are going 5 times, 100 times larger than where we are today.
All right, very interesting. Thank you very much. There are some questions, of course, also to Karl Nyberg. Maybe one more broader one I would like to place first. It's about energy taxation. And we would be interested in your take on the future energy taxation in Europe, because it's very likely that we will see also a Commission proposal in that respect. So in the moment, we have the situation that e-fuels are basically having the same energy tax like fossil fuels, due to the fact that the CO2 footprint is not taken into account. What would be your take, or what would you wish to the European Commission in terms of changing that? And maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So I think that I think Sigrid brought up a very good theme in her initial speech about the different structure that are existing now, and you know, also how they all sit together. And I think that that is of course the key thing, that we are creating a, let's say, network of different regulations that then feed in the right kind of direction, that the right kind of decisions are made, that we are getting the right kind of investments. I think overall, I mean, if I take a little bit more broader view on the energy taxation question, I think that there clearly is some needs to look into that in the European level, because I don't think that we have an energy taxation that is supporting the renewable energy transition really in the way that we need to do it. And then actually how that should be done in the details, I don't have any ready-made answer to that question, but it's certainly an area that I and we believe that needs to be looked into more closely. And we need to find the ways to support the kind of renewable solutions for the transport sector as well, which we know it's a hard to abate sector. It's a very costly sector to reduce the emissions, and so we need to find instruments that are supporting the direction more coherently, but then at the same time, so that we take into account that these different types of structures that we have in place, that they are pushing in the same direction. And here I think we also come to the question around, the tailpipe emissions versus the well-to-wheel approach, and currently that there are elements that is not clearly steering things towards a let's say technology neutral and efficient way. We need to ensure that we have efficient way to reduce the emissions in the transport sector.
Thank you very much. And then is another question from Wolfgang Hormuth, which is a little bit more detailed, I would say. I just read it loudly. So looking into bio-based fuels and also PTX fuels is great. Nevertheless, I was wondering what importance the development of fuels which improve the combustion efficiency has, in addition to the AM technologies. It is my personal understanding that the best climate benefit is to use just less fuel for the same mechanical work, isn't it?
So of course, efficiency is part of the transition as well. So of course we need to ensure that we have efficient ICEs on the road, and we constantly also develop the technology from that perspective. But I think that the fuels can play an important role here as well. And for instance, if you look at our solution, our NESTE Renewable diesel, I mean, it's a very clean burning fuel. It's a pure paraffinic fuel with a very high cetane number. So you are actually gaining a lot of you're getting efficiency also by using that fuel in a combustion engine. So I think it's both and. I mean, we need to look at all the different parts of the chain of the transport sectors, that we need to gain efficiencies in various different parts. And then of course also I think the mobility overall, I mean, that was mentioned as well, that it's a mobility is a diverse sector. I mean, there are very, very much different types of needs, and I believe that there are a lot of efficiency gains that we can also gain in that area. So it's about the vehicles, the technology in the vehicles. It's about the fuels, and it's also about the whole system.
All right, thank you very much. Sigrid, maybe you allow me to ask you as somebody I worked with very long time in Brussels, and you're very familiar with the how Brussels institutions actually work concerning now this Green Deal project which is coming up. So it's more a political question in terms of decision making. I mean, we will see, looks like mid of July, we will see a package which is called Fit for 55, which contains 15 or even more different regulatory proposals on completely different areas, and also actually quite difficult areas when you think about emission trading, about CO2 standards for cars, RED, or energy taxation. I'm always wondering, because I think we never saw such a regulatory project before in history, at least as far as I'm concerned. So all these proposals will be discussed and decided basically in parallel in the European Parliament, in different committees, and in the same time in the European Council in different minister councils. And in addition to that, we are dealing with the fallout of a global pandemic and the economical fallout. Of course, there are a lot of political decisions to be made there as well. And we have, as I pointed out before, several elections coming up, which of course, especially when they are in the bigger countries like Germany, France, Italy, which affect always also the decision-making process in Brussels. Do you have any imagination how this will work out at the end of the day? Because I mean, the goals are very tough. The announcements are outstanding in terms of climate policy, but then we come to the concrete nitty-gritty of regulatory framework in the decision-making process.
Absolutely, I think you summed it up really well. The magnitude of the challenge, of course, is huge, but also then the magnitude and of what we see and what we will see coming from Brussels is without precedents. And so there are many opportunities, and we always try to look at it from the positive side, but there are also many risks entailed to this process. And then indeed, in combination with the recovery from the pandemic, also considerations, and Commissioner Oettinger mentioned it, the Europe doesn't exist in isolation. Another proposal will come on the carbon border adjustment mechanism, for example. And I think he gave a very powerful warning about China, that we shouldn't be naive about their strategies and about the need really for Europe to stay competitive also in a global perspective. Just yesterday, the European Commission published their latest thinking about industrial policy. Lots of talk again about strategic autonomy, critical technologies, and working together, building alliances to make Europe stronger. Well, we believe that's all very important, but we should also really safeguard the strengths that we currently have and make sure that we build on these strengths to do even better and to solve the problems that in the end we all want to save. So yeah, you asked me about what I think might be coming out of it all. I think it's very, very difficult to say. As Commissioner Oettinger indeed said, the proposals will be coming now in July, but then it actually only starts because the real decisions will be taken by the member states, the 27 that need to agree, together with the European Parliament, where again we see quite a green setup of the Parliament and yeah, very high ambitions there. And I think the time is really over that we talk about ambition setting. The ambitions are clear, and we want to be climate neutral together as a society by 2050. Now is really the time to start talking about the how, and we haven't seen enough of that. And what the Commission will be coming out with in July, this huge package as you described, we want to see it as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to align and to integrate what are currently often very sectoral, strictly sectoral regulations. But we cannot approach this issue in an isolated manner, not globally, but also not in a separated manner between silos of sectors or regulations that were crafted before for very good reasons, but they may need adjustment now. And what we hear when talking to the Commission, and I understand it when I put myself in their shoes, but they say, we are in such a hurry, the urgency is immense. We don't have time now to make things more complex or to really do a thorough rethinking of how to shape our policy framework. And I would say, well, if someone needs to do it and can do it, it's the European Commission. And it's what we all as citizens and also as stakeholders can and should expect from the Commission. And if the Commission doesn't do it, and of course they will come out with many very well thought, very well crafted proposals, they will do impact assessments, but the debate only starts after that. And if they don't deliver what they should, then it's up to member states and the European Parliament to, in that discussion, then make things better, improve it. And there are risks there because there are risks of trade-offs between these different elements of the packages. And the different interests will collide. So that we need to keep an eye on, the global framework, the global perspective, and the nitty-gritty, as you said. And again, we need a fairer comparison between different options. And that's true for different technology options, but also for the pricing signals that we set. And again, that's where the alignment comes in. Today, CO2 has a very different price. Where you look, it's different. And other elements are important too. Inequality across Europe. What about the Central and Eastern European countries? What about those countries and regions where the energy transition is not as progressed, or where they don't have the means or the natural resources to do so? Inequality across incomes. Really, I think the debate is only starting. It's a very important one. It's a crucial one. And together we must make sure that the Green Deal will be a sensible deal. Let's make sure that we get the Green Deal right.
Thank you very much for this, more or less, we could say, closing remarks. Sigrid, thank you very much. But let me take into account what Sigrid actually just said. I would ask all our panelists for a closing remark. So if they look on this Green Deal project, maybe you could just give us one or two priority issues which you would see should happen in this Green Deal project. Maybe Mrs. Hafenbradl, would you like to start with that?
Sure, I start. So on my wish list, clearly is let's get regulations that are technology agnostic and that are based on carbon index and allow really the innovation to be implemented and also allows multiple technologies to be utilized and to come into the market and to grow and be implemented. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Armin Schnettler.
Yeah, to make it short and simple, we need a quota for green fuels.
Thank you very much. Carl?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned that in my speech as well. So I think, first of all, the stability, the predictability of the regulation for the let's say for the existing efforts that are ongoing already. We have a lot of investments already in the pipeline. So let's keep the course and the clarity there. The interconnection, make sure that the regulation are supporting each other, that we are taking a more holistic approach, and that we really aim for the greenhouse gas reduction targets and that the regulatory framework sits together and supports that direction. That would be my wish.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Sigrid.
Thank you. Yeah, our argument, and I hope that came across, is really one in favor of a pragmatic approach. And not all electric engines run on green energy, certainly not today. And not all combustion engines need to run on fossil fuels. The point really is that both engine types can run on green energy. And it's therefore the engine types, not that matters most, but ensuring that only green energy fuels them. So we need a recognition for this in the regulatory framework, and that's our wish for the coming months and year and a half, I would say.
Thank you very much. So it's on me finally to thank the distinguished panel for your contribution. I think what we achieved, for me, actually the most interesting goal and the most interesting issue we need to elaborate further in public is the real interesting value chain we have in the field of e-fuels. We always, in our political discussions, we realize a lot of people, be it decision makers or people out there, don't really know enough about these technologies which are actually there. It's We are not talking fantasies here. And I think under the hashtag Power to Future, we will continue to have these events. Also with because we have a lot of other members also from in our membership, which are also a very interesting part of this value chain, and I'm looking forward to having more of that and to present that also in our social media campaign. Now the eFuel, and thank you very much again to all the panelists for participating on this event. Now the eFuel Alliance is actually growing also in Europe. We are founded in Germany originally, but we have more and more members coming from different European companies, but also different eFuel alliances coming from other member companies. And the most recent project in that respect is the eFuel Alliance Austria, which is actually just starting their activities. And we are very pleased to have Jürgen Roth now with us, who is our last speaker, and he will do the closing remarks, and we'll also use the opportunity to introduce the eFuel Alliance Austria a little bit to us. Jürgen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Very warm welcome to all participants from Austria, and I have now the honor and the pleasure to quickly wrap up today's event and to forward some closing remarks, as we just heard. I think that the main outcome of today's event, and it has really shown once more, it is really time to move forward on better regulation. There's a unique chance to put forward a regulatory framework in the European Union, which enables global investments in production of e-fuels. The technology is ready. We heard that the investors are ready. Now we need to enable the markets for proper business models. In my personal opinion, the Green Deal will only work out if it's also an economical success. I think we have to keep in mind three special points. First, the Green Deal has to be socially acceptable. Second, the Green Deal needs to comply that Europe stays competitive, especially versus the US and China. And third, last but not least, it also has to fulfill customer needs. Without the customers, I think it won't work out. And therefore, and we heard this today a lot of times, we have to be technology neutral. We have to involve a lot of research and development. That's where we are basically strong on, especially some member countries. And we will need every single technology, in my opinion, to fulfill the very challenging goals. You said Austria also founded eFuel Alliance. That's right. I'm the chairman of the board, and we are fully motivated in gaining as many members as possible. And we have one USP as well. I think we are right now on developing the biggest e-fuel demo plant of its kind within Europe, with a yearly output of at least 500,000 liters per annum. And I'm pretty much looking forward that we can really prove what we are all now talking about, that this is really, really working out. So at the end, I can just tell you, with almost 300 participants over the whole event, I think this format has already proven itself, and it will definitely be extended. We will inform you in time about the next event and when it will take place. And meanwhile, I just want to thank you, all the participants, for taking place, all the speakers for their really, really important input. And last but not least, I wish you to stay tuned for more to come. But overall, please stay healthy. All the best.